According to you, what is a real man, or what should he be?
You should want the best for people, for you, for your family, and for the community. Courage is a good thing. Courage in the face of life's difficulties. One of the things I suggest to the people who are watching my videos, for example, is that a good ambition is to be the most reliable person at your father's funeral.
You think that nowadays men lack virility, that they're not men anymore?
No, I think that you could make a case that they are punished for those virtues and so are less likely to feel confident in their expression or development.
You feel that society nowadays tells men that it's not okay to be ambitious?
I think it's definitely the case that happens. It's certainly not encouraged, it's discouraged because of the confusion between, the purposeful confusion, in my estimation, between power and competence.
You think the hierarchy of the patriarchal system is a good one?
Well, first of all, I'm not convinced that the theory that what we have is a patriarchal hierarchy is correct to begin with. I don't think that way, because I don't understand precisely what that means. Does that mean that women had no role in shaping our society? It's only been the last 10 years that people have made the presumption that it's self-evident that what we live in is a patriarchy. What women haven't contributed? Is this the point we're making? Is that women haven't contributed to our society? They just weren't there until 1965, and all of a sudden they took their place. All the women before that weren't doing anything at all. It was all patriarchy.
You don't feel that globally men have the better end of the stick?
No. Well, no, I don't believe that globally men have the...
Right. Men get to die more. Men get to fight in more wars. Men get to be imprisoned for much longer than women. The world is ran by a very small, wealthy, elite group. Primarily men, of course, but there's some women in there. You could say it's oligarchical. You could say it's plutocratic. You could say it's authoritarian, but it's not patriarchal.
Better end of the stick. Like what? I don't understand why people would even begin to conceptualize the world that way. Better in what way?
Roles of power in businesses, politically, men pretty much rule the world, no?
Well, what about in warfare? What about in dangerous jobs? Who gets killed in war? Who fights in war? Men.
You have women who are soldiers in the army nowadays. Yeah. It's opening more and more.
Yeah, well, no.
Of course, the journalist is not going to at all lend any credence to the reality that men also suffer significantly. This journalist is not ready to concede anything, right? You tell him that men are dying far more than women in war, and his response is, "Oh, okay, but yeah, some women are in the military." That doesn't change the reality. The reality is it's primarily men doing these dangerous jobs. It's primarily men dying in war. It's primarily men getting sentenced in prison for much longer than women. It's primarily men who occupy the worst positions in society. It's primarily men who have to do the most servile and dangerous and unfulfilling and undignified roles in society. Garbage disposal, primarily men. They only want the positions of power. Not garbage disposal, not deep sea fishing. None of that shit.
No, we're not going to go down that. Is a woman soldier
not as good as a man soldier?
I don't know whether a woman soldier is as good as a man soldier.
The requirements are less for women than they are for men. Army eases fitness test standards for women, older troops. The Army has scrapped its move to have a physical fitness test that's gender and age neutral, and will now allow women and older soldiers to pass while meeting some reduced standards. There you go.
I know that in most armed forces, women aren't placed in high combat frontline positions.
Who is responsible for this, the demasculization of the society?
Feminist groups have a fair bit to do with it, and the radical left types that insist that what we live in is a patriarchal tyranny.
What is the issue with feminists nowadays?
They think that the idea that our culture is a tyrannical patriarchy is an axiomatic truth. Well, I think that's complete nonsense. The insistence that sex, gender identity, and gender expression are social constructions, the insistence upon that, the insistence that if there are any differences in outcome, that's a consequence of oppression. That's what's up with them. All of that's complete bloody nonsense.
You have the feeling that feminism has gone too far?
Far too far. But it's the leftist it's not so much feminism, it's really the ideology that characterizes the radical left. Feminism is part of that.
Even though there were still huge inequalities.
What inequalities are we talking about precisely?
Talking about wages, access
to
positions of power.
The wage gap has nothing to do with prejudice, or virtually nothing to do with it. Single men and women in their 20s. In fact, there's a wage advantage for single women in their 20s. So if there's any gap at all.
The fact that people continue to still bring up this wage gap argument is strange to me, because it just shows you haven't done the research. But I'm sure most of you watching already know this. And if you don't, do the research. Because if you believe society is just structured in a way that people just want to pay women less, you're part of the problem.
all with regards to wages. It's a gap between people and mothers.
Most of the data in all of the countries, come up to that conclusion that a woman who has the same position as a man.
Women and men who do the same job, the women end up getting paid less?
Yes.
And you control for everything else? No, sorry, the data's wrong. There's at least 16 reasons why men get paid more than women. Men work longer hours. If you work 10% longer hours, you make 40% more money. Okay, men work in more dangerous positions. So there's a wage advantage for working in more dangerous positions. Men are more likely to move as a consequence of being required to by their job. So men are, there's more.
I understand what you're saying. You're saying that there were many different points that explain why we come up to that final statistic, but that if you look at the reasons why, then it's because men work longer, because they move more than women, and they
work in more dangerous positions. They're more likely to work outside.
I'll take on that.
They're more likely to work in STEM fields. They're more likely to work in fields where you can scale. If you look and you say, well, on average, women make less money than men, which is also different than saying that they make less for doing the same work, because those aren't the same claims, then you have to say, well, what are the reasons that are contributing to that? You can't just say, well, it's a consequence of gender discrimination, unless you can only think about one thing at a time. And I would say that's another problem with the modern feminists, is they can only think.
This dude is clearly a propagandist. He acted as if the wage gap wasn't largely explained by the choices men and women make. Yet when Jordan Peterson brings these issues up, he's like, oh yeah, I know. He's like trying to speed run Jordan Peterson into a trap, into saying something that they can clickbait and mischaracterize, and again, create this false caricature of him being some evil dude.
In a video, you said that the problem with those angry women is that since at the end of the argument you cannot fight physically, you can't really deal with them.
That's not what I said. I said that that's one of the things that keeps conversation between men civil. Women can't argue with angry women. Women are often bullied by angry women.
What I meant was more, you said that, and I'm really not trying to paraphrase you or, to put words into your mouth.
You actually are trying that directly.
It is things that you said, that you cannot deal with those
yes, but don't tell me that you're not trying to put words into my mouth, because you selected what you're going to ask, and you selected it very carefully, with a tremendous amount of forethought.
Well,
and there's a purpose for that. What is the purpose precisely?
I am quoting things that you said.
Why? What is it that you're trying to establish?
Because you said that.
I thought we were talking about masculinity.
We are.
No, we're not.
Yes, we are.
How are we talking about masculinity?
Because I'm asking you what you think of men and of women.
Basically what you've been trying to do, I would say, for the last 15 minutes is put me into a sequence of corners by accusing me of various forms of misbehavior. So why are we doing that? What's the point here?
These are things that you said. My job as a journalist is to ask questions about what you represent and the ideas that you defend.
Your job is also to select the things that you might ask about in some...
Now he's suddenly getting defensive, as if this whole interview, he hasn't been trying to mischaracterize Jordan Peterson.
Manner that doesn't indicate a substantive bias. You picked 3 things to talk to me about in the last 20 minutes that were very carefully selected. Why did you pick those things?
Because this is my job.
No, not necessarily. You could be asking me, for example, why I've spoken to 250,000 people live in the last 8 months. That might be more newsworthy.
Well, we're not going to have a big debate about journalism, but if a journalist doesn't ask the tough questions, how can you give the good answers?
Well, it depends on what the tough questions are. It depends on
I didn't think that they would be tough. We're talking about things that you said. I mean, if it's easier to have conversation between men, because there is this underlying threat, of a physical contact.
I don't think it's easier. It tends to be somewhat more civil.
So fighting is the ultimate way of resolving the conflict?
It's a good question.
That's not what he's saying. Fighting is not the ultimate way of resolving a conflict. It's just saying when you know there's a threat of violence, you tend to conduct yourself a bit more carefully. When you interact with men, we understand there's always a threat of violence, so you're a bit more measured. What is so complicated about that?
Question. It's a good question. The ultimate way of resolving a conflict is to negotiate for peace, if you can manage it. But if you can't negotiate for peace, then what are the alternatives?
How do you explain so many young men follow you, listen to you?
Because they need encouragement. And they need a reason for growing up. And I encourage them and give them a reason to grow up. It's better to grow up than to stay immature.
Were you a father figure?
Sometimes.
A prophet, in a way, a guru?
I don't believe that I'm a guru. Mm-hmm. I don't think that you can be a guru and tell people to take their own way. I'm asking people to develop a vision for their own lives and to adopt the responsibility for that. But it has to be something that's personal.
But do you feel responsibility then?
Yes, absolutely. Fundamentally, this is supposed to be helpful to people.
What if I told you that You're playing on young men's distress to make all that money.
That accusation has been leveled at me before. I don't know how I'm playing on their distress, exploiting it or helping it.
The fact
Look,
is,
I've
a lot
said
of
right from
people-
the beginning that I'm an evil capitalist. I don't make any bones about it. I'm not ashamed of making money. It's very hard to make money.
I don't see anything wrong with what Jordan Peterson is doing. Like, he's putting out a message. If you like the message, invest in it. If you don't, keep it moving. He's not even saying anything crazy. He's really just saying basic common sense stuff that people should already understand. And it resonates with a lot of young people because they have no direction in their lives. That's what's happening. But anyways, that was the video. Let me know what you guys think. Make sure to like and subscribe. If you agree, comment below. If you disagree, also comment below. And I'll see you guys later. Peace.